So now we want to be able to simplify powers of I. And we'll go back to a review here of the last video. I is I. Okay, so I to the first power is just I. I to the second power is -1. You have to remember that. I cubed is -I, which you could figure that out from the other two. And then I to the fourth is just 1. So you only have 4 choices for an answer. Either you're going to have I, -1, -I, or 1. So all powers of I have to simplify to that. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that. Now in the last video, we were writing them out. We don't want to have to write we don't have to do 35 lines to figure this out. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about I to the 35th as I to the 32nd times I cubed. Now, you could say, well, why did you pick 32 and 3? Why didn't you pick 30 and 5 or 29 and 6? Okay, I'll explain that part in the next example. But I to the 32 is divisible by 4. So how many times does 4 go into 32? 8. So remember, power to a power, you multiply those. So I can write I to the 32, or I to the 32nd, as I to the 4th to the 8th power. But I to the 4th is just 1. So all those 1s are just going to be 1 when you're multiplying them. So I get down to I cubed, and I cubed was on my chart. It's -I. So I'm done. Okay? So the idea is take out all the 4ths you can, and then you can go from 1 to 4 for an exponent, and we have ways of dealing with that. Okay, so let's look at I to the 18th. I'm going to think, okay, how many times does 4 go into 18? 4 times, right? And the remainder 2. So I to the 18th is 4, I to the 4th to the 4th, that's 16, times an I squared. But all of this is just going to be 1. And then what's I squared? -1. Okay? So really, you can just go by the remainder. So take your exponent, divide it by 4, whatever the remainder is, then you go to your I chart and you can say how it simplifies. Okay, let me do one more real quick. This isn't on your paper. Let's say you had I to the 97th power. So you take 97, divide it by 4. I had to pick a big number. Dividing. Okay, so I get a remainder 1. So my I to the 97th is the same thing as I to the 1st, or just I. Okay, so it's like a bonus problem in there I squeezed in there. Okay, now there is one little situation that throws some students sometimes. They're like, okay, I get this. I'm going to take the 28 and I'm going to divide it by 4. So how many times does 4 go into 28? 7. 7 times 4 is 28. And my remainder is 0. Well, we never did I to the 0, right? But from previous knowledge of exponents, what's I to the 0? 1. Okay. You could also think of that I to the 28th as I to the 4th to the 7th, to the 7th, or 1 to the 7th, which is just 1. Okay, but if you're doing this division thing and you get 0 for the remainder, well, it's going to just be 1 then, I to the 0. Okay,